Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted.
It's not like he didn't give a statement that day. He sat in the precinct and met in a room with your colleagues and did give a full statement. So that wasn't true either, right?
I didn't know that until today, that he had sat down with someone.
You told one of the witnesses who disagreed with you during an interview that you thought Mr. Baldwin was a cocksucker.
I do not recall saying that.
The Alec Baldwin Rust movie trial shooting was just dismissed over withheld evidence and prejudice. A batch of ammunition that had been turned over months ago by a witness claimed it was related to the Rust shooting. This ammunition was put into an entirely different case file and not handed over to the defense. The state is required to turn over all evidence to the defense no matter what. Ms. Morrissey takes the stand and it does not help the situation. They never turned over Brady evidence. The prosecutor, Ms. Morrissey, says she looked at the picture of the bullets and said it had no evidentiary value and decided not to turn it over. But she doesn't have the right to do that. That's insane. Hit subscribe. Here we go. So day 3 started out with this motion to dismiss hearing outside the presence of the jury, obviously. Alec's lawyer right here, Mr. Spiro, speaks.
And I get many sort of inbound emails that I don't obviously read everyone or take everyone seriously, but I got one last night that indicated that the cameras are catching Ms. Morrissey signaling witnesses.
Big accusation for a prosecutor, signaling witnesses on the stand.
I felt obligated, and like I said to the court, I try to not make these issues. This is a high-pressure case. I've been in many. There have been more issues in this case than I have ever seen in all of those cases combined. And so I'm sort of at a loss but to bring it to the court's attention. So I've asked them to print me the photograph that was sent to me. I can't just continue to give the benefit of the doubt on every single thing that's occurred in this case. I just can't. I don't know how much of it can happen.
He sends a picture of 4 bullets. Ms. Morrissey is going to hold that up to you and say, these are the 4 bullets you knew about this. That was from 2021. Detective Hancock does not preserve the other live ammunition that's at Teskey's property, even though he told her this could be from the live ammunition batch that matches the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. 2 years later, November 2nd, 2023, there's a PTI of Teskey. Ms. Morrissey's asking questions, and she starts probing further into the live ammunition that Teskey had previously said was given to him by Thelreed. And she says, do you still have some of that ammunition? He says, well, some of it, but I've been out shooting it over the last 2 years because Detective Hancock did not preserve it over that time period. Ms. Morrissey says, I want you to preserve that. And do you think there's any evidence that this was sabotage? And he says, well, actually, Seth Kinney called me while Rust was shooting, telling me he wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez-Reed fired.
Holy all signs are pointing towards sabotage there.
He didn't know how to do it because he was concerned about upsetting Thelreed, significant armor in the business, as your honor knows.
Father of Rush Armor, Henry Reed, says gun was sabotaged by a disgruntled crew member who wanted to cause a safety incident, but didn't mean for cinematographer Helena Hutchins to die.
As we know, Sarah Zachary, the one who threw the live bullets away, or bullets away, we don't know, live or not, threw bullets away after the incident on Rust, admitted that she was on set. They were close, we know that. And so Ms. Morrissey says, you hold on to that evidence, I'll come get it, in essence. She never does. November 2023. Fast forward to March 6, 2024, the end of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial. Teskey's in Santa Fe, sees what happens, shows up at the sheriff's office, as we heard from Ms. Popppell, and delivers that live ammunition that Hancock had not preserved, that Ms. Morrissey had not collected, that he believed could be from the same batch, from that same green ammo can that we care about, that matched the bullet that killed Helena Hutchins. We heard, Your Honor, what Ms. Popppell did with it. They buried it. I'd like to say charitably that it was under the pile of the 5501 information that they didn't disclose. That's even too charitable because they put it under a different case with a different number. We asked, March 26th, we want all of the ammunition from the Rust set that you've collected. April 16th, we show up for that viewing. We want all the live ammunition from the Rust set that you collected. It's not there. After Teskey had turned it in, after Ms. Popppell had created the report, the supplemental report she said she created when she took this in and did not disclose to us, it was not there.
Under a different case number. They pretty much buried it.
But what we do know is the state had it. It's disclosable under Giglio. It's disclosable under 5501. We're talking about the conduct of the prosecution. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, Your Honor. We're talking about a prosecution that didn't preserve those bullets, that didn't collect them at all, that didn't turn them over. We already have a 5501 culpability finding with respect to the last set of information. We've got 5501 violation, culpability, we don't need to show bad faith. We've got a Brady violation. We've got a Giglio violation. Now, this is critical evidence in the case that was never disclosed to us. We heard Ms. Morrissey say, I'm going to have Detective Hancock come in and testify. We could have Ms. Popppell testify. They could say it doesn't match, et cetera, et cetera. It does not matter. It did not matter in Allison. We were entitled to it. Continuance is not a sufficient remedy. This case should be dismissed, Your Honor.
I mean, he's right. Ms. Morrissey fucked up big time.
This is over and over and over and over again. And Your Honor, you've given them a fair chance. You've given them more than enough opportunities, Your Honor. This is not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not even the third time. It's time for this case to be dismissed, Your Honor. That's what Brady requires. That's what Giglio requires. That's what 501 requires. This is the one that's right for this moment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Teskey is Thel Reed's close friend, and Mr. Teskey stores Mr. Reed's ammunition. These are not similar to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. Detective Hancock gets this information from Mr. Kinney. Ultimately, though, still goes ahead and executes her search warrant as she should. I said, have him send me a picture of it so that I can determine whether it has any evidentiary value, and I can speak to my case agent about it.
You don't, that's not how it works. Prosecutors have a responsibility to disclose everything, so something like this doesn't happen.
The photograph that was sent to me is the photograph in the middle. That is not the same ammunition. You can tell from looking at it. It has a different
Doesn't
projectile
matter.
shape. That's not the same projectile shape. That's not the same casing. This isn't a Starline brass casing. It also has brass primers and not silver primers. So I agreed with Detective Hancock, this has no evidentiary value. We're not going to continue to go down this rabbit hole. There is absolutely nothing about the ammunition that Troy Teskey had that has any evidentiary value in the Gutierrez case. It has no evidentiary value in the Baldwin case. This feels like asking us to go to every sporting goods store, collect all of their .45 caliber ammunition, and send it off for testing. We're not required to do that. It simply doesn't have any evidentiary value, and the defense was aware of it.
She does not get to determine what has evidentiary value. This is a disaster.
None of this is exculpatory at all. This is the exact same batch of ammunition that has already been sent to the FBI and tested, because it all came from the same place. There's no reason for us to do it again.
If this evidence wasn't as important as we say it is, they would have turned it over. The fact that they concealed it, the fact that they put it under a separate document number, didn't disclose the supplemental report, didn't disclose the bullets, didn't bring them to the April 6th evidentiary viewing, if it was that irrelevant, it had no evidentiary value, it would have been there, Your Honor, number one. Number two, Ms. Morrissey does not get to determine what has evidentiary value and what doesn't.
Why would she ever say that and think that's a good reason?
5501 says it's required to be disclosed, period, full stop. And in fact, in the Allison case, it was not exculpatory. It was inculpatory. It was the defendant's own arrest record and his own lies to the state. This goes to credibility. It goes to the government's bias, improper motivation, and incompetence. I'm taking those exact words from the motion in limine ruling that Your Honor made. That goes into evidence. It's relevant to Poppell's credibility, to Hancock's credibility. It relates to every single thing we've planned in this entire case, Your Honor. And right in the middle of it, Ms. Morrissey doesn't tell you what was actually turned in. She shows you a picture from 2021, a subset of the rounds that were turned in by Teskey, a subset. He said he shot a bunch of rounds in those 2 years. The picture was only of 4. This is critical evidence, Your Honor. And whether Seth Kinney is right or wrong, or how we debate whether he was involved or not involved, that's completely irrelevant. Because what we know is we don't have those bullets, and they were required to be disclosed so we could put on the case that's fair. And that's exactly what Brady says, Your Honor. Brady says that the administration of justice requires fairness. That was the entire premise of the decision, fairness, and that's all we've wanted from the beginning, Your Honor. And you've given them chance after chance after chance, and there are no more chances, Your Honor. Brady says it, Giglio says it, 5501 requires it.
Mr. NIKAS snapping there, brother.
And said, we want you to bring the rounds to court tomorrow. And she got their message, and then they reached out to her again and said, no, never mind, we don't want you to bring the rounds
Thank
to
you,
court
Ms.
tomorrow.
Morrissey. Thank you, Ms. Morrissey.
I have them.
I don't, okay, where are
They're
they?
here. I'll go get her.
So the rounds are there. She's saying the defense didn't want them at some point.
Well, actually, I want testimony from Ms. Poppell on how she retrieved those.
So Miss Poppell, the crime scene tech, is back. This judge is putting on gloves and opening up evidence. This is crazy.
This is unusual, but if you all don't mind, and if there's any objection, I'm going to have her step down, and when I ask her a question about which is which, she will put it out. Is that all right with everybody?
However you want to do it.
Okay, so I just need you to have some gloves. You didn't test any further rounds after the Hannah Gutierrez case? No. Okay. In the Hannah Gutierrez case, can you point out what types he did test from here?
I'm uncertain what types he tested.
This is a witness testifying, Ms. Morrissey. Please stop. Do you recognize any of these types of bullets to have been gathered on the Hannah Gutierrez, on the Rust set?
The Starline brass with silver primer are similar to what was collected on set.
And everything that was collected on set went to Ziegler?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions, but I'll certainly allow some cross-examination.
Didn't he turn in ammunition that matched the ammunition that killed Ms. Hutchins? It's true that he did, correct?
And I did not recall at that time.
I understand that that's your position, but that's what in fact happened. Would you agree?
I would not use the word match without there being an additional analysis.
Well, who got to decide whether there would be additional analysis?
That was not myself.
Miss Morrissey.
I don't know what you were aware of.
Okay. Well, you know that we came to have an evidence viewing where we asked to see every single round that could be related to the Rust set, and this was hidden from us. You do know that.
This was not hidden.
This was not hidden?
This was under a case number. It was documented. I was instructed to document it under this case number.
Okay, so in this case that's under the Rust investigation case number, you would agree with me there's hundreds of things that you inventoried, right?
Yes.
There are hundreds of police reports that all relate to the same case number, right?
Yes.
The one thing that seems to have been put under a different case number is just this one discovery of the actual ammunition that matches the ammunition from the set of Rust.
This was put under a doc information of someone coming in claiming to have rounds that were not utilized in a case.
Okay, well, let's examine that for a second. When Seth Kinney comes into the precinct and he gives you ammunition, you vouchered it, right?
I was instructed to collect the ammunition from Seth Kinney.
Investigator Poppel, you're following orders, right, when you're doing these things, correct?
Can you please stop referring to me as investigator?
Okay, well, how would you, I apologize.
I'm a
not doing
crime
that.
scene technician. I'm not an investigator.
Okay, I'm only doing that because it's shorter than crime scene technician.
CST works.
Perfect, okay. CST Poppel, you're effectively following orders when you're deciding whether to voucher this or voucher the Seth Kinney evidence, right?
You keep using the word voucher, and I'm not sure what context you're using it.
Yeah, I apologize for that word choice also. When you inventory and make a report, I think your testimony is you're doing it at the direction of supervisors. Is that fair?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay. So when Seth Kinney walks into the precinct and gives you ammunition and says it's from the Rust case, you all inventoried it, right?
Yes.
You took photos of it, right?
Yes.
You put it under the Rust case number, right?
Yes.
You turned it over to the defense, right?
According to my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Somebody else comes in to the precinct, okay? A man named Troy Teskey, right?
Yes.
Who was a former police officer, right?
I believe he stated that, yes.
Okay. And I assume you all have the diligence to be able to confirm that, right?
I do not know if it was confirmed or not.
Okay. And he comes in and he also tells you he has evidence, right?
He told us 3 years later, after a trial, that he had evidence that the defense wanted him to use that he no longer wanted to hold on to.
Okay, let's break that down for a second, right? Mr. Teskey isn't involved in your meetings with the prosecutors and Corporal Hancock's meetings with the prosecutors up until the trial, was it?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so doesn't it make sense that he would have seen the trial on television, been completely outraged at what he was watching, not trusted law enforcement, and then walked it into the precinct? Doesn't that make sense?
I do not know what would make sense to Mr. Teskey.
Okay, didn't he in fact tell you, I don't trust Miss Morrissey and the prosecutors?
He did not state that to me.
He didn't on your oath? You sure about that?
I do not recall him stating that.
So he turns this round in, and you, when he turns it in, obviously recognize it as Starline Brass, nickel primer, Colt 45.
Yes.
Okay? So it's not as if he came in and just turned in a bunch of shells, right?
He did turn in a whole bunch of shells.
Okay, but he didn't just turn in shells, right?
He turned in multiple different 45 rounds.
I'll ask the question a third time. He didn't just turn in shells, did he?
He turned in multiple 45 rounds.
Including rounds that matched the round that struck Miss Hutchins, right?
Again, I wouldn't use the word match without further analysis.
And the reason that we don't have further analysis is you all didn't send this to the FBI for further analysis, did you?
We did not.
Right? Because if you had, it would have potentially proven the fact that all along this ammunition did come from Seth Kinney. Isn't that true?
What I was informed of by Mr. Teskey, the ammunition originated from Joe Swanson.
And then went in the green ammo can to Seth Kinney.
I do not recall him speaking about a green ammo can.
And he said, thank goodness it's you. You're the perfect person to take this because you know all about the Rust case. And you said, I know all about the Rust case, right?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny that?
No.
Okay. And then he said this ammunition was in Seth Kinney's possession, and you said Seth Kinney's law enforcement is well aware of Mr. Kinney, right?
I don't recall that.
So you take this ammunition on March 6th. The standard operating procedure for the Santa Fe Police Department says you're supposed to make your report within 24 hours, right?
Correct.
Okay. So tell the court, did you make the report within 24 hours?
Fairly certain that our SOP is that evidence should be submitted within 24 hours. I am not certain on when the reports are supposed to be submitted.
So do you want to take your answer back? that you
Yes,
gave
I
a minute
do.
ago?
I apologize, yes. I believe it was the following month.
What happened during that month?
To be fairly honest, I went out of town to visit my dying mother.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry to hear that. Were you out of town that entire month?
I don't believe it was the entire month, no.
Okay. And it's a sentence I've never seen in a police report. You tell me if you've ever seen this in a police report in your entire career. It says, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SO detective.
You are not reading my section of the report. You are reading what was written by Lieutenant Brian Brandel.
I was going to say, it doesn't look like you're writing. So the lieutenant writes in, thank you for clarifying that. I just got this report, as you know, right? It should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detective.
What the f*** were these people thinking?
In your career, going back to when you were at CST in Florida, all the way through the present. Have you ever seen such a sentence in a police report in your entire career?
Not that exact sentence, no.
Would you agree with me that the two most critical items in this case from an evidentiary perspective were probably the firearm in question and the live ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
I would say the firearm and the live ammunition from the set.
Okay. And so the firearm, which we've had hearings, discussions about, was ultimately broken beyond repair by law enforcement, right?
Broken by the FBI lab.
That was issued by the experts for the prosecution about that firearm and whether or not it had been modified before, was buried also by the prosecutors, correct?
I do not know about that report.
Okay, and then we can turn to this second most critical piece of evidence in this case. This was also buried by law enforcement, correct?
No.
No, it wasn't. Okay. Request from the defense of all ammunition taken by law enforcement to not mean the ammunition that you recovered that matched the ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins?
I don't believe they looked at all the ammunition that day.
Well, no, but the request was all ammunition. So I'm asking you, did law enforcement interpret that request to not include this critical evidence?
All of the items that were pulled for the case were under the Rust case number.
Well, your report says this is evidence from Rust, and then it just puts it under a different case number, and the lieutenant then writes that sentence in saying this isn't evidence from Rust, right?
My report states that Mr. Teskey believed that it was related to Rust, and then I listed the case number next to that.
Who turns in the matching ammunition, who tells you it's involved in the case, where there's tons of corroboration both by what he provides and the history that law enforcement knows about this man, and you put it under a different case number.
What's the different case number? It's clearly them burying it.
I'm sorry, what was your question in that long statement?
You put it under a different case number.
Yes, as I was instructed to do so.
Because they were burying it.
You told Mr. Teskey that you would write up a report because of how important this was the very same day, didn't you?
I don't recall stating the very same day.
You don't deny that, though, do you?
I don't deny it, but I don't recall it.
Okay, nothing further.
She doesn't deny it, so it actually took her a month. Not same day, but...
So I am getting my witnesses over here so that I can make a full record on this issue.
Well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday, you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response.
I never saw these. I've never seen these, and I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning.
All right.
I've never seen the report until
So
this morning.
ask questions of this witness, and then you can line up your witnesses, and I'll see. But we're going to go with Hancock after this.
An absolute f***ing shit show.
If Troy Teskey, who provided this ammunition, is a friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, and if these bullets...
I'd ask the prosecutor not to be touching those with her bare hands.
They rolled around for 3 years. Okay. Is this evidence that Seth Kinney provided live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No,
How did the defense attorneys know to cross-examine you on it yesterday?
I do not know.
Do you have any idea when the defense attorneys learned about this ammunition?
No, I do not.
Do you know who they learned it from?
No.
Alright, here we go. Rust Props Firearm Supplier.
State your name for the record.
Seth Kinney. I am the owner of a company that provides props to a number of feature films.
In case I missed it, how many rounds came back to New Mexico?
Between 50 and 100.
Between 50 and 100. Bro, these rounds, it was so mismanaged.
When they came back to New Mexico, where did they go?
They went, because I was running low on space, they went into the bathroom.
Did you receive any communications from her regarding the use of live rounds in the prop gun?
She did. She did reach out to me.
How? Text, call?
Both. She called on one particular day because she had been looking for 45 Colt ammunition, live ammunition to shoot.
How did you know that?
Because she asked me at the office. And I thought it was odd because Dale had live ammunition and you know, why was he not giving his daughter any? I found it peculiar. At one point in her travels from Albuquerque to Livingston, Montana, she stops along the way and stays with friends in Denver, Colorado. And at one point between Denver, Colorado and Livingston, Montana on her travels, she called me and told me she finally had found live ammunition, 45.
Once she makes it to Montana, does she contact you about shooting live ammunition out of the prop guns?
She does. She texts me this time and she asks if she can shoot live ammunition out of the set guns.
Well, how did you respond?
I said absolutely not, and it's a big mistake, and I even said it always ends in tears.
And did you have any additional communications with her about live rounds after that?
I don't believe so.
So after you take your box of dummy rounds and you give it to Sarah Zachary, do you ever see it again?
Only in the evidence photos. And you can see that they're heavily aged, and this is after each one has been polished with...
What about this one? Does this one look different?
Yeah, absolutely. The case is way too bright. It looks nearly new, and that is an anomaly. I do not believe that came from me, because all the rounds were heavily aged.
Obviously, there's an incident and Ms. Hutchins dies. Do you then reach out to law enforcement and begin communicating with law enforcement?
I do.
And you bring me to my next question. Are you familiar with the way that the live rounds found on the set of Rust look?
I am.
Do they look like these?
No. Troy writes, I checked a bunch of the rounds. These are the 4 different types that I could find. And I reply, yep, it's evidence in the accidental death.
And hang on, we're going to stop there. Why did you think this was evidence in the accidental death?
And I hadn't really connected the dots that the gentleman that loads these hasn't had nickel primers in 10, 12 years.
How do you know that?
Well, he says he only used Winchester primers.
No. Did you speak to him? How
Yes,
do you
yes,
know
I
that?
did.
Okay.
Right after Hancock and I got done with this meeting, I called him because it dawned on me that it seemed unlikely that there would be two different color primers.
Do you still believe that these are evidence in the accidental death?
Definitely not.
Did you, in fact, tell Detective Hancock that that picture, that round, was sketchy?
I recall saying that, or texting her, possibly texting her saying that, because it was concerning, because it didn't look like any of the antique rounds that I had provided.
At the time, years ago, when you first see this, when your memory was fresher, the word you used was sketchy, correct?
I recall that, yes.
You spoke to Ms. Zachary 5 times that night, right?
I don't recall, probably.
Ms. Zachary, you know, had the shell casing, right, at one point that evening?
No, I don't recall that.
You don't recall that?
No, that she said she held the spent case from the gun. I don't recall that.
Sarah Zachary threw out some of the evidence, correct?
I'd heard that months and months afterwards, that she had thrown out dummy rounds.
You would agree with me that anybody who did provide that round or brought it onto the set would have every reason to want to deny that, correct?
No, Hannah Gutierrez admitted in questioning at the sheriff's office that she brought the box that contained the live rounds.
No, she didn't. She actually said she hadn't seen that box, and that's just something that's been fed to you by the prosecutor, isn't that true?
No, I've actually seen the interview.
Okay, well, we can pull up that interview if we need to. You texted Sarah Zachary in the days that followed, do not say anything or write anything to anyone, right?
Yes, I remember that text.
Do nothing, say nothing, write nothing, correct?
Correct.
She told you she wanted to get a lawyer, right?
Yes.
You told her not to get a lawyer, right?
Yes.
In fact, at one point you just said, shh, and with an emoji, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay. She's seriously trying to blame everyone else for her mistake, correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. So it's, this sucks, but she's trying to blame everybody else, right?
Yes.
This sucks that it comes from the same batch,
I would-
but it's really her fault because she loaded it into the weapon, right?
Well, first off, I pronounce that ugh. And then what was the second part of your question?
That was funny. Ugh, not
But it's her fault because she loaded it into the weapon, correct?
Certainly.
And you said that over and over again as you continue to meet with law enforcement, that whatever happened here, it's her fault, she loaded it, correct?
Well, certainly she's responsible for loading a live round into a gun on a movie set.
Shit. Well, she didn't do her job.
Now I recall, yes.
I bet you do, right? And the she who didn't do her job was the armorer, right?
Correct.
And the shit.
I think the shit was a concern that Swanson was going to get dragged into this, and it was going to have been some of his reloads that caused the death and injury.
Oh, the exclaiming of the shit was your concern for Joe?
I think it's a collective. I mean, there's 4 of them there. There's a lot of shit.
So some of the shits were for everybody that had ever touched the
The whole thing is awful.
Okay. Can we agree that you didn't intentionally provide live ammunition that set rust?
We can agree that it didn't at all.
Okay. Well, we can't actually agree to that.
Okay.
All right, here's Corporal Hancock.
Provided or did Mr. Kinney share with you a photograph of ammunition?
Yes.
Do you recall the photograph?
No, I don't.
To determine whether or not these rounds were similar to the rounds found on the set of Rust?
These would not have been similar to what we had found on Rust.
Okay.
However, a distinguishable difference in this round and what we had found on Rust would have been the color of the primer. They're different colors.
If you recall, did you yourself ever have a conversation with Mr. Teskey?
Not where it was just me and him, but I have had a conversation with him in the conversation.
So let me ask you this. After you were provided this information, the photograph and the information about the rounds, where was your understanding of where those rounds were located?
In Arizona?
Were you aware that Mr. Teskey was a friend of Ms. Gutierrez's father?
Yes. I had gotten some correspondence that a male by the name of Troy Teskey had came in and had ammunition and that he wanted to turn it over
Came in where?
to the courts.
So he came here?
Yes.
To this building?
Yes.
And who did he speak to, if you know?
He spoke to I believe the deputies downstairs that were working the courts.
And what were you doing at that point in time?
I was here in trial. When I had found out that he had shown up to the sheriff's office, he didn't pick up the phone and I never received a call back.
And let me ask you, why is it important for you to take a statement?
Because I need to figure out what to do with this ammunition and how it would potentially be tied to the case and in what way, so I can figure out what to do with it after that.
And you want to have the interview because you want to see if it's tied to the case?
Yes.
So you call him twice, and does he respond?
No.
Do you continue to try to reach him?
I did try to reach him again. I believe it was the following week. I tried to reach out a couple times.
If you don't have a witness who will give you an interview regarding the items that they've dropped off at the sheriff's department, how do you know that they're in any way related to the case?
I really wouldn't, because I didn't have a discussion with him.
And have you had an opportunity to review it?
Yes.
Given this, Your Honor.
I just got it. So
I just want the court to know. This is
I can give it to them.
This is the newest of the revelations.
This is the newest of newest revelations. So now they don't have body cam footage of this as well, of this guy providing ammunition.
Because the primer on this, the third one, it's a brass color. The primers that came from Rust were silver.
These are, you counsel, you need to come up. Counsel, you need to come up. I'm questioning, you're gonna need to see this, both of you. You just testified. Let me just ask this. None of these look similar to the set on Rust,
To the live ammunition.
to the live ammunition on
Yes,
Rust.
ma'am. Yes, Your Honor.
But it still looks similar to what was on Rust.
Yes, as far as, yes.
It looks similar to these on rust.
For the dummies, yes.
Yes, it looks similar to dummies on rust.
Dummies, but not live.
Okay, I understand your distinction on
Okay.
live, but they still look similar. That one, the third one from the left, still looks similar to dummies on rust.
Yes.
So the investigator f***ed up.
It also came up with Mr. Teskey and Mr. Swanson in front of you on November 1st when Mr. Kinney found out and said, shit, 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 but it's her fault, right?
He said that a lot.
He said that exact phrase? Shit, 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 but it's her fault? He said that a lot?
Yeah.
Did you grow suspicious of Mr. Kinney? If he kept saying that?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Kinney is sus.
You knew that Mr. Teskey was at least somewhat involved because when you're interviewing Mr. Kinney, he's calling him in front of you, correct?
Yes.
Sending you screenshots of messages with him, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Teskey showed up here, according to you, at the Hancock retrial, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Teskey then walked into the police precinct with ammunition that he claims and says is matching to the ammunition that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
I don't think he ever made the statement it was matching,
Well, that's really for law enforcement and the FBI to decide, isn't it?
which would have been investigated if he would have answered a phone call or returned a phone call.
Okay, and I know we're going to get to that, don't worry, but wasn't the first excuse you gave, Corporal. The first thing you said when this came up on direct examination was that you didn't know it was related to this case. Do you remember testifying to that on direct?
How would I have known if I wasn't given an opportunity to talk to him myself?
You would have no way of knowing that the man who was on speakerphone with you talking to Seth Kinney, the man whose screenshots you received, the man who showed up at the Hancock retrial, the man who walked into your precinct talking about the Rust movie, you would have no way of knowing that it was related to Rust?
I would have need to come to the conclusion myself that it could have been tied back to Rust. There's been many people throughout this investigation that state that they have evidence or testimony to give that wasn't in relation to what I was doing.
So is there other evidence in this case that has this quantum of proof that you have hidden from the defense?
I don't think I've hidden anything.
Is there any other evidence in this case that you think this court should be aware of, that you're aware of, Corporal Hancock?
No.
And when Mr. Teskey came in, he stated that he believed it was from the same batch of ammunition that was located at Seth Kinney's warehouse in Albuquerque, correct?
When he came in?
To the precinct.
So sorry, I just want to understand this. You're saying that Troy Teskey made the statement to law enforcement that the ammunition matched Rust.
Correct.
Where is that statement coming from?
In your own police report.
Okay.
I'm reading it.
Okay, so that's not my police report.
I didn't say it was your police report.
You
Corporal.
just said it was.
No, I said in the police report.
Just as a point of clarification, can we...
Is this an objection or is she just talking?
You gotta have an objection, okay?
My
Speak.
request is that we correct the record with regard to Mr. Cyrus.
That is not an objection.
Okay.
What is your objection?
I want to correct the record that he
One
actually did
word.
say I'm showing you your police report.
He corrected himself, a police report.
In your sheriff office's police report, okay? I don't mean your personal police report, but in your sheriff's office police report, right?
Okay, understand.
Okay. Not only does this police report come into the very same sheriff's office, right? This is your police department, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does it say live rounds of ammunition that he believed to be connected to the Rust case, right? You
Yes.
saw that, right?
Why wouldn't they investigate that even if the guy didn't answer his phone? That doesn't seem like the best reason.
Not only does he say it's the same batch that was at Seth Kinney's, right?
I mean, that's what it says there. I don't remember that statement in the video, but
It's not as if Mr. Teskey was talking to some random auxiliary cop that happened to be walking through the station. He was talking to CST Popple, wasn't he?
yes, he was.
The same CST Popple that testified yesterday, right?
Yes.
That testified that everywhere in this case that she went, you went. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. You took the item, but you took it and put it in a different box than the rest of the items in the Rust case, correct?
Well, I don't think they're all, I mean, I'm not the evidence technician, so I don't know how.
Well, you know this wasn't placed and designated as a Rust evidentiary matter. It was kept and vouchered, as you heard yesterday, under a completely separate identification number, correct?
A different case number.
Unlike the hundreds and hundreds of other items that were collected in this case from a variety of sources, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and a lot of those items were like random, irrelevant, tangential things that all went into CST Popple's inventory in this case, right?
I think all those items were collected on scenes through search warrants or through somebody that gave them to us that we could have had a conversation with, and I could be able to relate what that item was and how it may have been related to Rust.
There was no way to relate this item to Rust, and the guys in your precinct telling you this is related to Rust, and you had spoken to him on speakerphone, and you had gotten those text messages. There's no way to relate it?
Again, I didn't get a statement from him when he's dropping off this ammunition and didn't see it because I wasn't there
Well-
when he was dropping the ammunition off.
Well, your colleagues got a statement, didn't they?
Yes.
Right? It's not like he didn't give a statement that day. He sat in the precinct and met in a room with your colleagues and did give a full statement. So that wasn't true either, right?
I didn't know that until today, that he had sat down with someone.
Okay, but now that you know that,
Jesus, what an error in this police department, dude.
now that you know that he gave a full witness statement, the story that the only reason that law enforcement couldn't possibly dream up a way to connect this to Rust and put it with the rest of the evidence doesn't work anymore, does it? Because he did give a statement, right?
I'm not going to agree with that because he said it didn't come from the set.
Well,
So-
you keep saying that, but he's not. The point of this isn't that he literally snuck onto the set and took it back, right? The point is that he had the matching ammunition so that we could understand the source of the lethal round, right?
But again, I didn't know he had matching ammunition.
Well, but your colleagues did.
Again, that wasn't something that was told to me.
I understand your testimony, but given that all of the things we just discussed about, wouldn't you agree that if law enforcement were to come into this court and say the only reason we couldn't possibly connect this to Rust was because he didn't give a witness statement, that doesn't work if he did give a witness statement? True?
Potentially, I'm going to still say that I wouldn't agree with that because I wasn't able to speak with him and how it would have been in relation to Rust.
Oh, not a good response. You're f***ed. This trial might be over, boys.
To submit things, we normally need to have a way to describe to the lab the reason for the testing.
I mean, is there a rule in your department that when you take in evidence from somebody who says it's connected to something, that you need to have some additional witness statements before you just voucher it and inventory it with the rest of the evidence? Is there some rule that you could point the court to?
I don't think there's one.
Right. There couldn't be, because nowhere else in this case of the 100 items did this rule apply, right?
I don't know. I don't think it's correct to compare all the other items in this case to ammunition that was turned in during the end of a trial.
Well, there are no calls from you and your cell phone that you used for everything else in this case to Mr. Teskey during the weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him. Do you know that?
Okay, so that's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no calls?
Also, no phone calls in the days and weeks that you claimed you were trying to reach him from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, but if I call, it's more than likely not going to come up from a no-caller ID.
That's a no-caller ID situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't know that he said it wasn't from the Rust set. In fact, the report says that he says it was from the Rust set, correct?
Right, which I had just reviewed today as well.
Right. But
Yes.
when Poppel when you were advised that Troy was there or was there, your understanding was that he was claiming it was from the Rust set.
I wouldn't say it was from the set, but it could be in relation to Rust.
Okay, so he told Poppel it was related to Rust.
Yes.
Okay. You didn't go over to the sheriff's office and look at the ammo.
No, I was here.
Well, I understand you were here, but you didn't. You said, well, Hannah Gutierrez's trial was over, which I took to mean that it wasn't pressing. But this case was ongoing at that time.
Yes.
So did you and Poppel have a conversation about what to do with this ammo?
To my understanding, it was going to be put in evidence
Which evidence?
at the sheriff's office.
The Rust evidence?
No.
Why
just,
not?
Just as far in our evidence section in the sheriff's office.
And why was that determination made?
As to why
Who
it
made
was.
it? Let me ask you, who made it?
These were discussions that were had with myself, with the supervisors at that time, and then with the prosecutors.
Were you the lead investigator?
Yes.
Okay. And you said, and with the prosecutors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you all had discussions about what to do with what he dropped off.
Yes.
The prosecutors had discussions about evidence? Dude, this is not good.
Agreed to put it in a separate file.
Yes.
Why? The judge just made her mind up right there.
And obviously, and I know it's obvious, but I want to make sure it's in the record, we were not ever shown that, correct?
Well, I believe that you guys had a secondary evidentiary meeting with the sheriff's office that was canceled the day before the meeting was supposed to happen. Or an evidence showing, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, we were able to come for some showings and not others. But the reality is when we came for showings, you never showed us this evidence, correct?
I don't know if I can agree with you there because even on the first day that I was present at the evidence hearing, we didn't get through all the evidence that they wanted to see that day.
Do you have any reason to believe that the ammunition that was provided by Mr. Teskey came from the set of Rust?
No.
Doesn't matter when it...
Was Ms. Morrissey part of that discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me give the court an offer of proof, and if Mr. Spiro wants me to, I'll testify under oath. You are going to testify? Sure, absolutely, I'm happy to.
She's gonna testify under oath too?
How do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Because it was collected during a search.
Did it come from the scene?
Yes, I believe that one did come from the church. Or
State's
around.
Exhibit 29, how do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
That was the casing that Marissa collected.
State's Exhibit 10, how do you know that's related to the set of Rust?
Collected
All of these photographs and all of the items that are in evidence, how do you know they're related to the set of Rust?
because we got them from Rust, or during the investigation or some part of the investigation.
How
of
do you
Rust.
know these rounds were in any way related to the set of Rust?
I don't.
Okay.
So this is the officer that has the body cam of when the guy brought in the ammunition?
They're from the set?
No.
Okay.
Could you hear what the gentleman said?
Yes.
Was he asked if they were from the set?
Yes.
What was his response?
No.
Sir, do you recall this conversation?
Yes, I do.
Do you know when Mr. Teskey is talking about being called as a witness in the Gutierrez trial, do you recall which side he was being called by?
I only learned that when he identified that.
What
Speaking
side?
On the defense side.
And when he said that he brought ammunition, but they didn't want to use it, was he referring to the prosecution or the defense? If he doesn't, I'm assuming he'll tell me.
I believe it's the defense.
I said, I have these rounds. I have a batch, a whole bunch of rounds.
Okay.
Or a bunch.
Told you had evidence multiple times.
He did call it evidence, yes, but we had to confirm that it is in fact evidence, which is why I relayed to Detective Hancock that she needed to conduct an interview with him.
And what did Detective Hancock say on the phone? Tell me everything about that conversation.
They were still at the trial, and that she would follow up with him, the evidence as well.
And that would have really messed up the trial, right? If they had taken that evidence and vouchered it and let anybody know, right?
I'm sorry, rephrase that?
That would have messed up the trial.
I don't believe it was used in the trial because it was never collected on our investigation.
The witness is giving information and law enforcement's asking questions and the witness continues to give information. That's not an interview?
Law enforcement wasn't asking questions. That was our crime scene tech.
No, not a single question was asked in that entire body cam?
I don't believe that I asked a question pertaining to the case other than believing it was evidence that was already part of the Hannah Reed case and there was already a chain of custody until after he began disclosing where the evidence came from.
And you write in your report, it should be noted that this is not actual evidence. That's what you write in your report.
I believe pertaining to our initial investigation.
It should be noted that this is not actual evidence from the death investigation collected by SFSO detectives. That's what you wrote, right?
Correct, and it wasn't collected by our detectives for the investigation.
I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me?
So the evidence that was brought, I was indicating because we didn't know if it was tied to the investigation. Detective Hancock asked that we tie it to a separate case number until further investigation could be completed. So I didn't want someone or anyone to assume that it was actually evidence that we collected tied to this investigation.
And so that was at the direction of Detective Hancock?
No, I wrote that on my own accord.
Well, you may have written that sentence on your own accord, but I think as you just testified, Detective Hancock, who was at the courthouse with Ms. Morrissey at the time, directed you to put it under a different identification number, correct?
Correct, pending further investigation.
You don't have to say anything under oath if you don't want to.
No, I'm happy to.
Okay, so not only happy to, you know, I don't, it doesn't matter to me whether you call yourself as a witness. It doesn't matter to the defense whether you call yourself as a witness.
The judge is like, are you sure you want to do this? This shit's falling apart.
There's no one here that's requiring you to be called as a witness.
The information, everything that happened in this regard, especially as it pertains to me, needs to come out in the public.
All right. Under penalty of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
This is insane.
Ammunition that is in the state of Arizona, that has never left Arizona, did not strike me that it had significant evidentiary value. Oh, and I will say, I believe I actually saw a photo of it. At that point in time, I was able to look at the ammunition myself, and it was visibly dissimilar than the rounds from the set of rust. When I received this photograph from Mr. Bowles, I could immediately tell that these are very dissimilar from the live rounds that were found on the set of rust. They have brass primers. So this is what was presented to the prosecution as the rounds that were in Mr. Teskey's possession. They have brass primers and not silver primers. One of them, the one on the left, appears to be a Starline brass casing, but they have truncated cone projectiles. We had seen ammunition that looked exactly like this, not exactly, but very, very similar, and that ammunition was the ammunition that was collected from the Sheriff's Department and went to the FBI for testing and was determined not to be similar in any way to the live rounds on the set of rust. So when I saw this photograph, I could see that it was not at all similar to the live rounds on the set of rust, and I decided not to take any steps to collect this ammunition because it was in Arizona, had never come to New Mexico, and didn't match the live rounds on the set of rust. And Detective Hancock indicated to me that because he dropped them off and he didn't wait for her, she was then going to try to follow up with him, take a statement from him, so that we could get some idea where they came from, what the relevance was, if there was any relevance at all. He never returned her phone calls. And that's all of the information that I can give the court, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
This is not good for Miss Morrissey.
The rounds that were left at the Sheriff's Department by Troy Teskey, I have absolutely no reason to believe that they are relevant to the incident that took place on the set of rust. These are rounds that were in the possession of Belle Reed and never left the state of Arizona.
You also did not allow the defense to view that evidence at any point during our request to review evidence in this case.
I had never seen it, and I didn't realize that it wasn't under the same case number because I'm not a law enforcement officer and I don't work at the Sheriff's Department. But you are right.
And you concede that they are Starline brass, silver 45, right?
I can. And this is the best evidence against Hannah Gutierrez.
Yeah, you've said that a couple times. Any favorable evidence you understand as a prosecutor has to be turned over to the defense, correct?
I do.
Any evidence that could be used as a defense to potentially be favorable has to be turned over to the defense.
Absolutely.
So the third Hague report that never got turned over to the defense, you understand that that's Brady evidence?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Part of her testimony was false, and I'll answer.
That she said that these rounds don't look anything like the rounds on set when you elicited that testimony.
Clearly not true.
I agree with you, and I didn't realize that there were rounds that looked like that.
It's okay. In any event, when the court, and you never tested those rounds either, correct?
Any of the rounds that came from Mr. Teskey? No, because they came in just a few months ago.
And the court asked you actually one question that I want to address, which is, the court said to you, well, what's interesting to me, to be quite honest, is that yesterday you didn't even want to do a written reply. You wanted to just give an oral response. And what you said to the court was, I never saw these, I've never seen these, and I never saw the report. I have absolutely never seen these until this morning. Do you remember saying that to the court?
With regard to the 3 Starline brass, with regard to the 3 cartridges that appear to be similar to rust, yes.
Well,
I never saw them until today.
Well, but you said also, I never saw the report, right?
I never did.
Right, but don't you think, given your duty of candor to this court, that that's awfully misleading to not tell the court at that point that you knew about this when it occurred long ago?
That I knew about what?
You knew that Mr. Teskey had turned in this evidence, that you knew that the report would have existed because you just told this court that the doc report was okayed by you.
Sure.
Don't you think it was misleading to this court to not just say at that point, just so you know, I know about this. I knew about this then. I was involved.
I did not intend to mislead the court. My understanding of what was dropped off at the sheriff's department is on this computer screen, and it looks absolutely nothing like the live rounds from the set of rust.
The truth of this matter is, you don't like Mr. Baldwin very much, do you?
You know, that is absolutely untrue. I actually really appreciate Mr. Baldwin's movies. I really appreciated the acting that he did
Oh, this is getting spicy.
on Saturday Night Live, and I really appreciate his politics.
You told one of the witnesses who disagreed with you during an interview that you thought Mr. Baldwin was a cocksucker.
I do not recall saying that. I know that that was something that Mr. Baldwin would say on the set of Rust. I don't recall saying that.
You
Oh my god, dude.
deny that under oath?
Without having more information, I can tell you that I do not recall ever saying that. And if I did say it, I invite you to point it out to me.
You called him an arrogant prick to another witness.
To who? To what witness?
I'm asking you, did you call him an arrogant prick during the witness interview?
I don't believe I did. I don't recall.
You deny that.
Without knowing what you're talking about, all I can tell you is that I can't respond if I don't know what you're talking about.
And you said also to witnesses that you would teach him a lesson.
I never said to witnesses that I would teach him a lesson. Absolutely not. In fact, Mr. Spiro, I want to give a full response to your question. Every effort in this case to resolve this case with your client in a very favorable way for him.
All right, I'm going to move to strike this. It's not responsive.
It is
Well, I don't
responsive.
want to talk about plea negotiations.
Yeah, she was talking about please. What? That's not appropriate right now.
I have no further
Do
questions.
you have any follow-up?
I want to say I have no recollection of calling him any of those names. I have invited the defendant.
This is what happens when a prosecutor takes a stand right there. What a terrible idea.
In order to establish a Brady violation, the defendant must show that the prosecution suppressed evidence,
Which they did.
the evidence was favorable to the accused, and the evidence was material to the defense. The definition of suppression of elements, this is Case versus Hatch, is while the first element requires proof that the prosecution suppressed or withheld the evidence in question, it does not require a finding of bad faith or any other culpable state of mind on the part of the prosecutor. This prong is satisfied. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office and the prosecution failed to disclose the supplemental report to defense and provide defense an opportunity to inspect the rounds collected into evidence that Mr. Teskey gave. The second Brady element is whether the suppressed evidence was favorable to the accused, either as impeachment or exculpatory evidence. This prong is satisfied. The suppressed evidence is favorable to the accused. It is impeachment evidence, has even been offered in this trial as impeachment,
It's over. Unreal. What a error on the prosecutor and the sheriff's office.
and is potentially exculpatory to the defense. Critically, the exculpatory value cannot be analyzed at such a late juncture because of the non-disclosure.
I think this is Alec's sister.
This evidence is material. The late discovery of this evidence during trial has impeded the effective use of evidence in such a way that it has impacted the fundamental fairness of the proceedings. The defense is not in a position to test the state's theory as to the source of the live rounds that killed Ms. Hutchins, or dismissal where the state's conduct is especially culpable, such as where evidence is unilaterally withheld by the state in bad faith, or all access to the evidence is precluded by state intransience. The state is highly culpable for its failure to provide this discovery to the defendant. The state unilaterally withheld a supplemental report. Santa Fe County Sheriff's Officer made the decision, and apparently also with the prosecutor, as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, that the evidence was of no evidentiary value and failed to connect the evidence to the instant case. The case agent, as well as pursuant to Hancock's testimony, Ms. Morrissey, was aware of the new evidence and yet did not make an effort to disclose it to defense. The state's willful withholding of this information was intentional and deliberate. The court concludes that this conduct is highly prejudicial to the defendant. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and this disclosure during the course of trial is so late that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. There is no way for the court to right this wrong.
There's no way for the court to right this wrong. Wow.
The sanction of dismissal is the only warranted remedy. The jury has been sworn, jeopardy has attached, and a mistrial would not be based upon manifest necessity. Further, the sanction of dismissal is warranted in this case. The state has repeatedly made representations to defense and to the court that they were compliant with all their discovery obligations. Despite their repeated representations, they have continued to fail to disclose critical evidence to the defendant. Brady and Harper are satisfied. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted. Per State v. Lemire, where discovery violations inject needless delay into the proceedings, courts may impose meaningful sanctions to effectuate their inherent power and promote efficient judicial administration. The state's discovery violation has injected a needless, incurable delay into the instant jury trial. Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted. Now, with respect to the jury, I don't imagine you all want to return on Monday. I will take care of the jury.
Thank you.
We are in recess. I'm not getting it. I'm gonna.
Dismiss him, Judge. Dismiss him.
Go ahead.
Thank you all for your help. Stay all okay.
Damn, that's some passionate lawyers right there. They were even crying. Look at Miss Morrissey. She's like, I fucked up, bro. What a disaster. And the trial is done. And they're not going to retry him again, obviously. Why would they not disclose everything, even if they think it means nothing? Just to be safe. You can't risk having Brady violations like this. Judge Glanville needs to take notes in the YSL trial because we've all seen several instances where Miss Love never handed over slides on the first day. There's so many instances. Watch my last video about YSL trial, but whatever. That's it for the Alec Baldwin trial. Hit subscribe. Love you guys. Peace out.
Diamonds, diamonds, diamonds.